guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you to everybody that's already subscribed, and thanks for all the great feedback on my last video, which was tips and tricks for traveling the world for free. Because you guys gave me such great feedback, I've decided I'm going to do lots more tips and tricks. So if you've got any ideas for videos that you'd like to see, make a comment underneath or send me a message and let me know what kind of thing you want to know. Now, I am definitely not a language expert, but I have been very enthusiastically learning with Rosetta Stone. You might have seen me tweeting about it recently, and I am learning Spanish. I'm having so much fun. And I think as you get a bit older, actually learning a completely new skill is a bit more unusual. Obviously, when you're a kid, you're constantly learning stuff. So I'm getting a lot of enjoyment out of learning something completely new. I never did Spanish at school. I studied French and German and a little bit of Latin. I did receive a few questions from you guys about what languages I can speak. I can speak French pretty well. My German's very basic, to be honest. We didn't do it for very long at school. And I can speak a little bit of Vietnamese because I lived in Hanoi for a year, and obviously you pick up a bit of the language when you're living there for that amount of time. But Spanish is something that I always wanted to speak, and I've been spending a lot of time in South America recently. I travelled through Ecuador and Colombia earlier this year, and it was just nice being able to interact with the locals that bit more than I would have been able to if I didn't speak Spanish. Now, my tip number one for learning a language when you're travelling is stay in a hostel. Now, you guys probably know that I stay in a lot of hostels when I travel, and the reason for this is you make some amazing friends. Hostels are such a social environment. There's usually a common area or a kitchen where everyone hangs out, or certainly the bar where everyone hangs out together. And there's going to be people from all over the world. So when I stayed in hostels when I was in South America, this was an amazing way for me to try and practice my Spanish. Equally, there are a lot of people trying to practice their English, so it kind of goes back and forth. And I did have quite a few slightly stunted conversations, but really fun ones where I would try and ask a question in Spanish, maybe they would try and reply in English, and it would go back and forth a little bit like this. The thing is with hostels as well is everybody's in the same boat. Everyone wants a bit of adventure, everyone wants to meet new people, and I think people are usually quite forgiving if your language skills aren't perfect, but they definitely appreciate you trying. So this is a really easy, fun way to try and practice your language skills. Number two, listen to music in the language that you want to speak. So this kind of happened by default for me when I was traveling in South America. Obviously there's a lot of Spanish language music. You still get a little bit of English language music as well, but generally it's Spanish. And you start to hear a lot of songs and recognize them, and you do start to pick up the words. And I've actually found with a few songs that I understand a lot more than I expected. I've gone as far as looking up the lyrics of certain songs that I like, and I actually recognise quite a lot of the words, which is really nice. And also, if you're able to sing along when you go out to a club in a different country, it's actually pretty cool to be able to join in a bit more with the music. Listening to music in a different language as well is a way of learning without really feeling like you're learning. It's not like you're having to sit down and open a book and study. You can have it on in the background. When I go to the gym, I quite often listen to Spanish language music, and like I said, I've just been picking up quite a lot of words from it, and it's fun as well. Do activities that take you out of your comfort zone. So when I was in Ecuador, I did quite a lot of adventurous activities. So I did a lot of surfing, I did a lot of horse riding, I swam with sea lions, and these were all amazing activities on their own, but what made them feel even more adventurous is generally the guide that I was with didn't speak any English. And obviously I can't expect them to because I'm not in an English language country. So this really encouraged me to practice my Spanish. The horse riding was a brilliant experience. We went on a really long horse trek, and actually throughout the guide was telling me lots of things in Spanish, and I had to try my very best and pick up words as I went along, and it actually made it a much more enjoyable experience. I probably could have opted to have an English speaking guide, but I figured I'm in Ecuador, I'm not here to speak English. He slowed his language down a little bit so I could understand more easily. And I definitely think that I'll do this in the future if I go to another country that speaks Spanish, which I hope I will be doing in the new year again. Then I'll try and do a lot of activities that do just push me out of my comfort zone, and that means that you have to try and speak the language.
So it's absolutely tipping it down, but we're having an absolutely lovely horse ride to the Howler Monkey Forest, and we've got our packed lunches. This way, there we go, we've got our packed lunches with us that we've wrapped in a banana leaf, and it's actually a lot cooler now that it's raining, so I don't mind at all.
Tip number 4, have on the subtitles when you are watching your favourite shows. So you won't necessarily be able to do this with every streaming platform, but you can with Netflix. So I quite often have the Spanish subtitles underneath when I'm watching shows. I did it when I was watching Friends. Maybe like some of you guys, I tend to just binge watch Friends over and over. I know all the words already, but now I'm trying to learn them in Spanish. So I put the subtitles on the bottom and I read along as I'm watching the show, and I do pick up a lot of words that way, and I start to recognise the words on the screen, and it feels pretty good. And you're having fun as well. As well as obviously watching things in English with Spanish subtitles, you can of course just watch films in the language that you're trying to learn. There's a lot of Spanish language films that I already love, like The Orphanage and Pan's Labyrinth, and I've gone back and rewatched some of these as well as finding out new recommendations. And it really does just help. You can obviously have the English language subtitles at the bottom, but it's just repetition. I think being around the language and hearing it over and over does just make it easier to learn. I actually remember meeting a little girl on the beach in Brazil, and she was about 7 or 8, and she had absolutely perfect English. And not only that, she actually used quite a lot of slang terms, and she used the word like, just like we would. And she said that she'd learned a little bit of English at school, but I asked her where she'd really learned it, and she actually said it's from the television. So she watches Nickelodeon quite a lot, and she has the subtitles on, and this is how she'd learned. She said it was important for her to be able to learn English because it meant that when she watched TV, she could understand the jokes more naturally, which I thought for an 8-year-old was a very mature attitude. My final tip, of course, is use Rosetta Stone. And I appreciate that this video is sponsored by Rosetta Stone, so you know that I'm going to mention it. But I would like to clarify something. I approached Rosetta Stone. It was me that had decided that I wanted to learn a language, and Rosetta Stone has just been a name that I've known for a really long time, and they've got a proven track record for helping people reach their language goals. So I reached out to them and I said that I had this goal of learning to speak Spanish, and so I've been doing a course with them now for getting on a year actually. I'm really enjoying learning it, I'm really enjoying using the app, and I've actually stuck to it. So I've tried to do Spanish courses before at home, and I just haven't seen it through. And there's just something about Rosetta Stone that just makes you want to continue learning. Now the app splits the lessons quite well between speaking, listening, reading and writing. So you do feel like you're learning all the different ways that you would need to communicate if you were speaking a new language. I also feel that it prioritizes phrases and words that you would actually find useful and need to know if you went away. I always felt like when I learned languages at school that they were teaching you things that you probably wouldn't need to say in day-to-day life. I remember we did a big section on describing what your bedroom looked like, which I have never had to do in my day-to-day life. I don't know about you guys, but Rosetta Stone, I think it's just more helpful language. What it teaches you, I've actually been able to use in my day-to-day life when I've been in South America and in Spain. It teaches you in a very conversational way. It's not too formal. It is just things that you actually would find useful when you were traveling. Now I put out some questions on Twitter and Instagram, asking what you guys wanted to know about learning languages, and especially learning languages with Rosetta Stone. So let's look at the questions that I got asked. Is it an app? Yes, it is an app, but you also have the option to do a desktop version as well if you prefer to do that. I have chosen the app because I am never without my phone. I carry it everywhere with me. I presume that most of you guys do as well. And it's just really handy for me because if I have a few minutes downtime between filming, or if I'm waiting for the tube, anything like that, I can just do 5 or 10 minute segments on my app, and I really feel like I've achieved just that little bit more of my language skills for the day. Some people do prefer the desktop version, and obviously you can do one or the other, or you can do both, but at the moment I'm just using it as an app on my phone. It only takes a moment to load, and it's really easy to navigate. I also got asked what kind of methods it uses to teach you Spanish, and this is a really good question because Rosetta Stone actually uses a total immersion technique, and this means there is no translation. Now, a non-translation technique means that all the words and all the sounds that you hear are in the language that you're trying to learn. There is nothing in English at all. But I'll tell you, this is incredibly helpful because when you're in a different country and you don't understand the language, you don't have subtitles, you don't have translations. And I think it just pushes you that little bit more to try and learn the language, and it helps you try and work out sentences, which you would have to do if you were in the country and you didn't have a translator. I did get a question as well about how long the lessons are, and they're actually quite short, to be honest, but I find this really helpful because we don't always have time to sit down for an hour and learn a language. I'd love to have that much time, but I'm busy. I know you guys are too. So it's pretty handy. They're usually about 5 or 10 minutes long, so it's pretty easy to dip in and out of if you've only got a short amount of time. I did have a few people asking me about how the app or how the desktop version can grade you on your pronunciation. So how this works is when you say a word, you get a bar come up. So it's a green circle, and if it goes all the way around, it means that your pronunciation was perfect. Usually you'll probably get it about halfway or about 3/4, and it means that you'll probably be understood, but there's maybe a little bit of room for improvement. Obviously you can go back and practice and repeat the words and try and get the green bar all the way around, but I feel it's quite a good way of gauging whether you'd be able to be understood when you're pronouncing these words. I got another question asking how quickly the pace of the lessons move along, and this is also a really great question. With the pace of the lessons, I've found that they've got a really good balance between practicing words that you've already learned and also introducing new vocabulary and new grammar into the equation. Because obviously you can't just hear a word once and then remember it. So there is obviously a little bit of repetition, but with every lesson, you're going to be introduced to a new word or a new phrase, and I think you can definitely feel the progression. Even after a few days, you notice that you're learning more things. Now, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and thanks for sending me in all of your questions. If you do fancy learning a different language, then Rosetta Stone have got a whole range to choose from. And I've actually got a 50% off code, which I have got in the link in my video down below. So click on there and use the code ALEX50 in the cart to get 50% off. Make sure to subscribe, guys. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.